I learned two really cool lessons this year from an African tribesman in South Sudan when I was there working on an anti-poaching task force. The food was bad. It was not great food. There were moments where all we had was tins of fish and crackers for several meals in a row, that kind of thing. It wasn't great. And I got thinking about like, man, I can't, like, this food sucks. And this African tribesman was like, when did you people, and he's referring to us in the West, he's like, when did you people think that at any point food was actually supposed to taste good? And I was like, wait a minute. And I was able to translate that to struggle. Like, we're not supposed to have a struggle-free life. Like, when did feeling deeply negatively when did feeling deeply negatively about something become actually bad? Yes, it's distressing in the moment, but the absence of that in life is not the point. The purpose of life is not to not feel that. It's part of life. And if I can change it to be a welcome part of my life, oftentimes, like, I use it as a bit of a litmus test or a vector check, because if I'm struggling, that means I'm probably doing something right.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Well, we made it. We're finally here.
Yes, this is a long time coming. I think I was trying to recall when our first interaction was, and I think it was your article.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was in 2022.
Or a while ago, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I don't remember what it said.
I mean, it was all about you and Mustangs. That's what we talk about here.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of them. I recently had the privilege, got called up by a guy named Cowboy Dave to go up to northern Alberta. I'm presently in Dillon, Montana.
Okay. I know it's hard to keep track of you. I never know where you are. Africa, Montana.
All over the place.
Canada.
The drive up, like we call them, well, not everybody calls them that, but a lot of people call them wildies in Alberta.
Yeah.
There are a fair few number of wildies, especially around the area where my little cabin's at, and then down kind of closer to, like, west of Calgary, like east slope of the Rocky Mountains, foothill stuff. But this spot I went up is like one of the furthest places I've ever been north in that particular part of Alberta, a place called Fairview. Eureka River was the name of it. And we got to go up there and visit with a guy. He's got a custom kind of breeding operation where you kind of drive the side-by-side around and you pick out your stud, the buckskin stud with this brand number, and then you drive over to like the pasture with 300 brood mares. You pick out your mare, and then a year and a half later, you go pick up your custom-built horse. But this gentleman...
What kind of horses?
What's that?
What kind of horses is that?
All kinds. Like, he's got a bunch of different...
Really? Just pick what looks good to you?
Yeah, like whatever you're looking for. Some guys are looking for, they call it a Canadian. It's kind of like a, not miniature horse, but it's a smaller version of like a perch.
Okay, I've heard of them.
Yeah. But one of the things that was kind of interesting, the two things that were interesting about it was they have a feedlot where they sell about 100 colts and weanlings to a feedlot, which blew my mind. And some of these are, like when they're weanlings and they're just kind of grown into their coat, especially in the wintertime, their face looks all messed up because there's hair and stuff missing.
Yeah.
And they get into their ears and
awkward, scraggly.
Yeah, they're
not cute stage.
Yeah, the not cute stage, exactly. And I go in this big red barn, and they're all there's about 80 or 100 of them in there, and they're at that point where they don't know to be afraid yet. They're all really curious, so they're all within arm's reach, and they're all just looking at me. And they were all getting shipped to Japan for sushi, and it really bothered me. It just buzzed. Like, I can ride.
They breed them just for that.
So they do, yeah. Well, they breed them for that, and then they go to a feedlot where they get finished, and then they get put in a box and flown to Japan. Yeah, kind of wild. He's got, it's actually where, there's a fairly ticket because the market for that is very good. Like, it's expensive, right? Like, these guys make good money breeding horses for that purpose over there. And it really got me thinking. I've never been a guy that had an inkling to not eat something or to eat something. Like, I'm a vegan because I like animals too much. I've never thought like that. Yeah. But I'm like, you know what? I don't think I want to eat sushi anymore. Yeah, it just kind of broke my heart.
Yeah, that is sad.
They, on this ranch as well, there was a herd of probably about 80 Mustangs that had come off a native reservation someplace up in northwestern Alberta. And I think the guy that owned them couldn't afford to feed them, and he had asked to move them onto this gentleman's place. And some of them too were like kind of some of them are like the young Mustangs that kind of look kind of inbred and weird. And like once again in that like kind of I've never seen it like a real wildly disformed, almost deformed inbred Mustang before. And I don't know, like I've not seen that down here in the States. But then again,
I would imagine they don't make it far if they,
yeah,
at least in the wild, in most
yeah,
situations.
for sure. And up there, they were kind of like pony size, and they're kind of, but they just look so strange. Not even cute strange, but just like, yeah. But he had he couldn't afford to feed him. So the deal was the guy that had given him to him to take care of for the winter was like, sell whatever you can to pay for the feed to get him through the winter. I don't know what their game plan is with those guys, but it really got me thinking about that. Yeah. My personal story with respect to the Mustang started back in 2021.
Yeah, you want to share it? I mean, I think you have a really powerful story.
Yeah, okay.
If you want to, it's totally up to you.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
I did my whole life. Predominance of my career was in the special operations community. And I suffered from just awful mental health issues and substance misuse and addiction and whatnot towards my time in service. And the only thing that kind of really kept me sane was managing a couple of small barns in rural Ontario, Canada.
Yeah.
I had applied to this program down here in Montana. It's a 41-day equine program that's led by combat vets, and it's for other combat vets, and it's meant to challenge you. And I needed something, and I knew that I needed to heal around these animals. I had done a couple other veteran equine kind of programs. None of them were Mustang based, and they were all kind of coddly, where like it's okay that that happened to you, and it's kind of like kid gloves to handle. But this one was smash and grab. This program didn't accept any excuses. Like the guy that you used to be is still in there. It was a few days before Christmas in 2020. I woke up on a hospital bed trying to take my own life, and I had the only place my parents would let me go unsupervised because they wanted to move me into their house was out to this little barn where there was a herd of 11 and then a stud horse just to do chores. It just gave me something to do. Something was dependent upon me. And I figured because I had gotten previously declined for some other veteran equine stuff that I was just going to have to figure this out myself, how to do this. So I saddle up this Montana Morgan horse. It's a Morgan horse that was from Montana. And I got bucked off. I ended up heading my head over the crossbar coming out of the round pen, and it kind of like juggled me a little bit, and that freaked the horse out. Got to bucking, and it was very icy.
Jeez.
Just very uninitiated.
It was icy?
It was icy, yeah. It was in the wintertime.
That's scary.
And and just like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up at that point, because I had just gotten out of the hospital, I had shaved patch marks on my chest from where they hook all the leads up to you. And I got on the phone and I started ranting at the guy that ran this program in Montana. And because I was a Canadian and they hadn't previously opened it up to international students.
Yeah.
My argument was, hey, look, man, the Taliban and ISIS, they didn't care if you were Canadian or American or Australian. Like bullets they don't discriminate. I chewed the same dirt that I have lot that you guys did, and I deserve a spot on this program like anybody else. And I got a call the next day, and he was like, "Yeah, you're in."
Were all these struggles that you were having, is that all from your time in the military?
Well,
was it something you experienced before and that just exacerbated it, or was a lot of it just
when it comes?
That time?
I've made like more or less my full time, not career. I made taking care of myself and managing these issues a huge part of my everyday because I have to. Yeah. I wanted to be at that time in my life. I wanted all of my problem sets to be from fighting in wars, losing friends in battle and things like that. I didn't lose a lot of friends in battle, but I did have some very, very close guys that were killed. I wasn't there at the time, but it just really got me thinking about the why and all this other stuff. When I had gone to a treatment center for PTSD at that time in my life addiction, I had later learned that a lot of the reasons that I react certain ways to certain situations that are actually very commonplace, it has to do more with the way that I was raised, my attachment styles, the way that I had rigid negative self-thought. Like what was it that I was trying to numb using substance? It actually had very little to do with the war and more to do with the way that the war acted upon me and the way that the little child inside of me responded to those stimulus.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd found that was really that was very interesting about equine therapeutic modalities is that And I work for a number of them now. And I get to see myself like 5 years ago with a guy running a flag in a round pen who's never been around a horse before, who's afraid of it, or he's anxious, or he's angry.
Where
Any
you
of those,
were.
yeah, I was like, I was there. I get that. I used to, like, one of my happy places is the round pen with a colt. It's like the whole world could be on fire around me, and the round pen is just like I'm so in the mode. It's kind of like the bullfighting thing. Like it's like I'm there. Like I'm not thinking about bills or any of this other
You're
stuff.
present. Yeah, you're not thinking about all the
Yeah.
other stuff that's come up and you're struggling with. Yeah, I get that.
We had one of the ones I worked for is called Project Overwatch, and one of the guys is Greg Allele, who's he runs Allele Horsemanship, and he's the equine kind of expert there. And the other guy on the board is a dude who used to be in used to fly in helicopters for the special operations community in America. And the two of these guys put this. It's a non-riding program, but it just exposes guys over weekends and stuff like that to some of these things. And you recall a story. My favorite parts of these things are sometimes it's with the vets, but I love getting these two other dudes in a room and we have these amazing conversations.
I bet.
One of the fellas that had gone in with, this is not my story. This is a story that was told to me. One of the guys that had gone in the round pen was a dude who had been a veteran and he struggled with the law. So he was always getting chased down by the cops, and he always had this, that kind of anxiety. Whenever he was being chased, he would, and he brought that level of anxiety into the round pen with him. You can watch it reflected back at him by this animal, which is so bizarre. Like it's wild, right? Like dogs don't do that. It's the only
planet wild. Did you notice it, or did someone watching notice it?
So once, and it was a thing too, is like sometimes we don't know what some of the guys' backstory is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that can be very effective, and then sometimes we are read into their backstory.
Yeah.
And it gives us an opportunity to maybe kind of piece those two things together. But there's also value in not knowing anything about a guy's backstory and just trying to focus on something that he's going with right now, because it's right now that the horse is responding to. Yeah. But if you're not in right now up here, then you're living something in the past and you're projecting it. Now the animal's responding to you right now.
Yeah.
And how those can be linked together. So that's part of a little bit of
just because like I've noticed, I've seen people with horses and all of a sudden I know so much more about them because of, their interactions that they're having. Like you were saying, that anxiety, like sometimes you put someone with a horse, it's like you can see just that anxiety level that they're living with is really high.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, from like, although I did just like almost 600, about 600 miles my first season on the back of a Mustang, I could say that it wasn't until, probably 2023, 2020, and even last year, there were moments like I remember, like it'd be something silly, like he'd spook and squirt 4 feet to the right, like that, and from a duck in the bush, and my heart would go up in my chest. I'd be afraid, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't confident in being sticky enough. I wasn't confident how to manage some of these situations, and I found that it was really interesting for me to work through that because, like, I could have a guy shoot at me, and I don't have the same stress reaction as I do when this horse would freak out, because I knew what to do when someone's shooting at me, but I don't know what to do when a horse is misbehaving or acting out or it's afraid or it's not paying enough attention to me, whatever. And so it took literally thousands of miles before I got really, really, really comfortable from start to finish, like getting first hand on a colt to riding a finished cutting horse. Gosh. And I'm by no means an expert. That's one of the things I love about the equine community is that if at some point you think you know it all, then it means you don't. Like you always, I just moved through various levels of consciousness, like Ray and Tom used to talk about. There's that unconscious unknown where you don't even know what you don't know yet. Yeah. And I find myself continuously poking around in the dark, learning things and realizing like, man, I really wish I knew this like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It would have been so much easier then, but you have to go through that process to get to that point.
That's the thing. So there are elements of the equine world, particularly in the cowboy one, that I'm not really interested in going through some of the new guy kind of strokes. And that might sound very arrogant of me, but like I turned 40 in a few weeks. Like from my background, like I'm used to, I can handle people yelling at me. But one thing I don't like is being disrespected when you show up as a new guy. They're like, well, you just got to go through it. You're low, man. I was like, no, I don't. I don't actually have to do that.
Yeah.
I need mentors, not bosses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from a leadership perspective, I've got lots of experience in that. From a horsemanship perspective, I know just enough to make myself dangerous and keep people safe. And but there's so much stuff to learn.
Yeah.
But there are elements of things that I don't want to go through. Like the old adage was like, saddle it up and get on it. And that's how you're going to learn. Yeah. I was like, okay, wait, there might be a better way here.
Yeah. Well, and it can be equally dangerous thinking you know everything. Refusing to take that feedback, especially from the horses. I think that's a big thing with Mustangs, that they don't mesh very well if someone thinks they know everything and it's not going well with what they need.
Yeah. we'd had the opportunity to kind of, that's another thing that I really enjoyed about working for some of these veteran outfits too, in the equine, specifically the Mustang space, is because the horse will teach you lessons that you don't even know you're learning until you've learned it, kind of thing. And one of the real challenges, and it's actually one of my favorite challenges, is pairing up a student or a participant with a particular animal that has a very specific personality.
Yeah.
Like, we'll pair stubborn participants up with stubborn Mustangs, and we'll see. It's like, yeah, man, make them do it. I just try it. Just try it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you guys got to learn to get along, or else you're not going to get anywhere. You know.
That's funny.
Or pairing up someone who's just absolutely anxiously crushed from fear, because he's like, we took a guy from like Atlanta, never been on a horse before in his life, and he spent the first 5 days on the back of this Mustang just terrified. And at one point, the mule that he was dragging, a slick mule, it went one way around a juniper and his horse went the other. And instead of letting go of the rope or stopping his horse and backing it up, it just ended up pulling him off the back of his Mustang.
Jeez.
And this terrified, lesser version of himself fell off this horse, but I swear a cowboy hit the ground, because he got up and immediately was able to take charge of his situation and his stock. And as soon as he showed leadership, both of those animals stopped taking advantage of him. And that's a lesson that he couldn't probably have learned unless it was taught to him. And so,
Yeah.
and it was a very gentle, very patient animal, and it took very good care of him.
Yeah, and also probably helped the animals feel safe once he was in control of himself, you know? So not necessarily that they're just trying to mess him up or whatever, but it's like they need that leadership sometimes.
They do, and I find that in most cases, like, you have to be. You're not going to get anywhere unless you're leading them. But a lot of people are just very anxious, or maybe they're not confident in their own leadership skills. They're not confident about the inputs they're putting into a horse. You know, they don't want to hurt them. They don't want to piss it off, or you know, have it do something dangerous.
Don't want to go too far anyway.
Right?
Yeah, so it's like you're scaredly walking on this little tightrope.
Yeah, and one of the things, particularly with animals that have multiple riders, like I don't own my own animal. I've ridden everybody else's animals.
Yeah.
And that's one. I had an old cowboy tell me once, like, you never know what it's like to ride until you ride 100 different horses. And I was like, okay, so I did that. And I've been on the hunt, you know, but I'm really picky. I'm sure once the first one's the picky one, after that I'll just buy whatever. But
yeah,
animals that oftentimes get multiple different types of riders of various skill levels they'll know, and they'll take advantage of you, because they can get away with it. And if you let them get away with it, if you're inconsistent in your application of your cues and whatnot, then they'll take advantage of you. And much like leadership in people, leadership I've found in animals is, if you go firm right away, it's always easier to go firm, and then you can slack off a little bit. But if you start soft, it's almost impossible to ever go firm enough. It's like when you're riding and you run out of cues. Like, I've spurred and I've whipped and I've clicked and I've kissed and all this other stuff, and I have no more cues left to get it to do the thing I need it to do. I've run out of influence. And so the application and consistency with the least amount of input to get the desired effect is, like, it's absolutely critical. But as a new router, you don't know that. But yeah.
Okay, well, I feel like I totally interrupted like you 5 times. So you want to go back to the guy you were telling us about in the round pen before we went off in another direction?
Yeah. So this guy was able to, I guess the backstory was, this guy was involved with the police a lot, and he would get this flight response. He would get anxious, or he would do something, and he would get a flight response when he was pursued by the police. And he was inputting that into, with a flag in the round pen, getting this animal to move. And he couldn't stop it with his intention. He was having to use really hard cues, and we kind of were able to pull the guy to the side and be like, maybe you're making the animal feel the way that the police did when they were chasing you after you'd made a mistake, and it's just scared and run.
Yeah.
So we were able to work through some problem sets and able to give this guy some personal grounding skills, and almost immediately watch those personal grounding skills of his own demeanor translate from 10 feet away into this animal that he didn't even touch yet. And it was just like the curative, not curative, but the mirror that you're looking at when you look at an animal, particularly in a round pen, is about pressure in there, and intention, I think. But it's able to open up and show guys, particularly vets that suffered trauma, elements of themselves that they wouldn't be able to learn from a doctor, or by taking a pill, or by going to a therapy session. And I think it's very, very effective. Now, it doesn't fix anybody. It's not a be-all, end-all, of course. But maybe that guy can reflect back on that moment and be like, wait a minute, what am I doing to amp up the people around me? And in turn, when they get amped up, I get more amped up. Like, I don't know, maybe he's got some little piece to a puzzle that is his life that he was able to put where it goes and use that as a tool for the remainder of his days. That's the hope, anyway.
Yeah. I think that's a lot how horses have helped me, is just like it helped me connect the dots almost, like, oh, I'm doing this and it's causing this result. Yet
Yeah.
I somehow, it doesn't click until I'm with the horses. But what do you feel like was you, with you, how did that make a difference, or your time with the Mustangs? And I guess, so you said after, sorry, go ahead. So
Oh,
many
no, go
thoughts,
ahead.
man. I
No,
was
that
just
was
going
it.
to say, you said that, after you were in the hospital, horses felt like the only place for you to be. Was that something, how did you make that connection that like horses were a good place for you during that time?
I had like the small herd that I was helping manage. I found that link through that network connection through doing a vet equine program where, and so I made friends with the farrier and the riding instructor, and
Okay.
she had managed a couple herds and she would trim. She also, I apprenticed her as a natural horse trimmer and that kind of thing. And so I just found that the routine and the structure was very important. Obviously, being around dependent animals, like you have to show up for them, like rain, sleet, snow, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That connection was like part of my day-to-day ceremonial ritual kind of thing. Like that was important. But I didn't get into really any serious riding until I had made it into Montana. And once again, there's that level of trust that occurs between, because I had a hard time trusting people. I mean, I had been betrayed by institutions and by people. And the horse that I was paired up with had a history of being particularly stubborn and not necessarily taking care of its riders. And I had an excellent connection with him. And he took really good care of me. And it kind of taught me that if I can, I had this excellent connection with this, sentient being, better connection than I did with some people in my life, certainly with some people I work with, some romantic interests, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it showed me that it's possible. Like if I can have a connection with this animal, then, and myself,
Yeah.
because you need to be really honest. That's what I love about the mountains. And that's what I love about burros and about Mustangs is you can lie to yourself all day long, but you can't lie to them. It doesn't care.
Yeah.
All that it sees when it responds to you is your honesty and your intent, and it sees your heart. And
Yeah.
people don't respond that way. And so it gave me a spark of hope that like, hey, maybe I'm not such a bad guy or a loser, because if this animal can trust me and it sees right through all of my baloney, then maybe I have a chance. And it was able to grow personally through the way that I saw myself reflected through these animals and the way that they were able to trust me. It's like, if this horse can trust me, maybe I can trust me. Maybe my friends, maybe I can be a better friend. So that was kind of that's a very, very, very baseline element of the journey for me. There is something about the connection to the land and the mountains through a horse. Like, I mean, there's no better, like, I'm not a hiker. Like, I walked everywhere with a heavy backpack on when I was in the Army. And I don't look around at the pretty trees and stuff like that. But when you're rolling at 3 miles an hour on horseback, you can actually look around at stuff, and it's nuts. Like, there's some science behind, the ore content of mountains sends a vibration that makes us feel good at a certain megahertz, whatever, blah, blah. Like, who cares about the science? I know how it makes me feel.
A really complicated way to explain what a lot of us have felt.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I don't know, but I was curious as to the why.
Yeah. No, and it is interesting to see that, yeah, there is science behind it or things supporting it that's like, well, this is why it's making you feel so good. But yeah. Just being out there really.
Yeah. It was something I'd continue to chase. And I do continue to chase. Like, I spend, between some of the outfits that I ride for, I spend probably about 6 to 8 weeks a year in the high country in the saddle, dragging mules places or helping, range ride and things like that. It all just really boils down to just being interested in being horseback. And I'm presently working on a project where I'm trying to get myself some old school education, because there's been an expression that one of the companies I work for in Africa wants to do law enforcement in anti-poaching in national parks on horseback.
Mm.
And so trying to put together a training plan for that, what that would look like. And that's kind of one of my dreams. I'll go downtown and buy myself a tin sheriff's badge and I'll go enforce the law in Africa on horseback. It'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like, that's like my 2026, 27 project kind of thing.
Yeah.
That I'm working through right now. Just like whatever it is, like, is there horse stuff? Yeah, I'm in, like, so it's always kind of been there. The Mustang Gambit is something it is wild to me, right? Like, they are a feral animal and they're a little bit, and that's why I like them. They're a little bit wild, just like me.
Yeah.
And, they have an extra gas tank and an extra gear, and they're a little bit tougher than other horses. And, kind of like me, like I see so much of myself in them. And there are guys in the cowboy community that they're very picky about the horses they ride. They don't like, I've heard all kinds of terrible
Some
nicknames.
of them really don't like Mustangs. There are a lot of people who think they're just trash.
Yeah. Like what did the last one I heard was range maggot. This
Oh,
guy used
really?
to work
Yeah, I
a
haven't
big
heard that one.
No, yeah, me neither. It was a new one to me. I roped a range maggot, put a brand on it, and I sold it for 5 grand or whatever it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, I just like, why, dude? Why don't you like them? I just don't understand that about people. I don't know. I'm not that picky.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that same programming, honestly, is like they're not acceptable in the communities that they're a part of. I don't know. Just don't have that same acceptance. It's a big task to fight against what you've just been beaten into. There's definitely people I've met who just
But
never
yeah,
really had time with a Mustang per se, but no, they're just trash horses that
yeah. I've got
mutts, all the stuff.
I've got a friend named Ethan who used to be a special operations guy too, and he's got a an initiative he put together too called Rifles to Reins, and it's a colt starting program specific to Mustangs in the Missoula area.
Yeah.
And I kind of found myself attracted to, obviously, guys that are like me. Not attracted to, sorry, that sounded weird. You know what I mean? I feel
Drawn
gravity.
to. I don't know if that's any better. I
I'm
get what
straight.
you're saying.
I'm a straight dude. I found
Just
myself
to clarify.
surrounding myself with guys that had gone from a life of special service or fought in wars and whatnot that found a bit of, they find peace and purpose and simplicity in kind of the old ways of the West. A lot of that has to do with horsemanship. A lot of it has to do with range riding cowboys or mountain men and homesteaders and stuff like that. And I was like, how come there isn't like a crew of this? Like, how come there's no follow up when we meet these guys and we do these cool things and then we all just kind of disappear? So
Yeah.
I founded this initiative this year called the Warfighter Cowboy Movement, and its acceptance of applicants is very basic. You have to have had to wear the uniform for at least a day in your life, and you need to have made at least $1 in the saddle since. And was able to find all kinds of network buddies, and we put together a cool Warfighter Cowboy Union drive this year, where it's a bunch of retired Special Forces dudes that were very prominent in the community, and they're doing other stuff for veterans and Native Americans and the equine world, rodeo, and I got through the network. I'm actually on my way to Road to the Horse this year with these
You
guys
are.
to go work
Yeah.
it. I get to go work at the Road to the Horse because of one of the guys that had found himself in this intentional community. We also did a drive this year, or a gathering. It was our first, like our inaugural gathering. We had 6 guys come out of various special forces backgrounds, throw their chaps on, and off we'd go. You tip your hat to your buddy at the horse trailer, and hopefully I'll see you at the corner fence and the corner of the fence line by last light if it goes well. And I found immense purpose and community. It was a little bit hard. There was obviously the resilient aspect that, like, I have a job to do and the animal that I don't know very well, and we're going to get it done, I promise. And that level of challenge is something that and then obviously now I'm in charge of this thing, and I was like, what? Like, I'm not in charge. I shouldn't be in charge of anything. No, but
It sounds perfect for you. I know you're like, how did I get here? But
it
that's
is.
that's a really cool idea.
A few years ago, I had some other friends try to get into that same program that I did in Montana, and for one reason or another, I've been the only Canadian that's gone through. So yeah, one of the other Canadians that was not accepted for the program and I were having a bottle of Pendleton whiskey in his saddle shop in Alberta, Canada, and we kind of conceptualized, why don't we do something like this up here? And so his partner is a medical professional in the psych realm, and they did 99% of the work. They got non-prof status, all this other stuff. They ran the pilot last year. There were challenges with that, obviously. And this year is our class 1 and 2, where we're doing 2 10-day trips up with his ranch non-prof, and we get to do all this stuff our version. And so I'm on the board for that. I'm a co-director, and it's engulfed most of my time in the last, like, since our applications dropped, it blew up. Like, now I've got to sift through people that can come and can't come, and it's a lot of challenge and hard on the heart. But it's fun.
And shows just the need for programs like that. I mean, and I don't know. I'm sure you can share some insights, but seems like the traditional mental health world and treatment fails a lot of people.
Yeah, you know what? I carry a lot of my frustrations with that because, much like the medical systems, are policy, protocol, and business model based. I remember when I was really suffering, and it was Army policy to send guys that had addiction issues to this one particular, because it was approved through the money, and policy said this is where you have to go because we have a contract with this rehabilitation clinic. And I had tried to go to one that was closer to home, and it was in the woods. My happy place is out in the wilderness. And I had a
Yeah.
surgeon and a medical doctor tell me, like, look, man, if nature was curative, you wouldn't be in this position that you're in. And you can't go to the one that you want to that's in the woods. We need to send you to one that's more secure. And I was
Yeah.
like, secure? Like, what do you mean? He was like,
Yeah.
because that, like, it
Sounds
sounds like, it's
right.
starting to sound like jail, And
Yeah.
it was like boot camp met jail.
Yeah.
And, I remember thinking, like, the only thing that keeps me here is my choice to be here, because if I really wanted to leave, I can leave. These traditional methods of helping guys, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but they're policy driven. And it's one of those things, like, they would rather have you bolted to a pill that's pressed chemicals that cost $10,000 a year for a medication that they're going to cover because it's the VA, then take you and send you on a 10-day trip where you get to in the mountains, where you're going to eat clean food and you're going to get a bit of exercise. You're going to expose yourself to mountain air and cold water, and
Yeah.
your other people in community in concert that are healing and want to get better with you. That is how traditionally, before the pill was invented, we used to care for each other as warriors coming home.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's only been in the last, say, couple hundred years that we've started using modern medical tools and whatnot. But back in the day, community helped guys, purpose helped guys, family helped guys. And we backseat all that stuff today
Yeah.
and just say, take this pill and go back to work, or take this
Yeah.
pill and don't feel. Have you tried feeling less sad? And so these tradition, not so. And when I say traditional, I just mean old world stuff, man. A lot of times with guys' needs, they just need to get out with around their friends, doing something that's challenging outside, free from substance. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. And it's certainly helped me immensely. Like, I certainly would not be here were it not for those particular more traditional style methods of helping guys.
Yeah. And traditional, you mean, because I used it like our modern, I guess is what I should have said. But you're saying like traditional, what we were doing hundreds of years ago when people are struggling.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not like war is a new thing. It's not like experiencing traumatic things in a battlefield are new things.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Right. And the way that the North American natives used to do it was you had a coming home ceremony. I've actually just finished a book reading on some of this stuff. There's some great literature on this stuff. Some of it's a lot of it's based in science, but the science now isn't necessarily what's recognized in today's modern psychological literature because it's outside the DSM-5 and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But it works. It's worked for millennia, and now all of a sudden it's no good. Like, come on. But it does, and it puts the onus on the individual. Medical or like modern institutional practice through the VA or through workman's comp and things like that also incentivize guys to stay sick and stay hurt. Because as soon as you're not those things, one, you don't have an identity anymore. It's just, a lot of it starts in your spirit and in your heart. And I can't think of a better animal to use in that context than the horse. So it's super duper special.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Like, my background is in mental health on the other side. And my first job right out of college was at a community mental health clinic, and it was attached to a hospital where people would inpatient stay. And just me being there, like, I could feel it just draining me. And I always said, if you're not struggling before you go into that hospital, like, you will be crazy when you come out, because it's like a dark place. And you're right, it's 90% dependent on pharmaceuticals to try and solve. I mean, they do therapy too, but pharmaceuticals are like the first line of defense, And like another thing that you just mentioned, like, it does have to do with your spirit. And when I was taught, it was like, you do not talk about spiritual, religious stuff. We need to detach that from psychological treatment, which is, again, just so crazy because it's like such a central part of your well-being to, like, I don't know, feel that connection to yourself and kind of wade through all the experiences you've had to reconnect with, the little inner child that was just innocent and didn't have a care in the world, and kind of get back to that and figure out like what happened in between.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's. I'm glad that that you brought up your background because you're going to have a much deeper understanding than, say, the layperson. And with that experience, watching people go in drained and their front line, like you said, is a pharma product. Like, I look at, we're not making people any healthier since pharma started than they were before. Like, obviously now, obviously there's a lot more people that would be around if we hadn't finished the vaccine for polio. That's not what I'm saying. Not the argument, but
not that all of it is bad.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But there's a huge proponent that is elements of your personal spirit that remain unhealed, unchecked, unvisited, uninitiated for me. Like, my spiritual journey was stunted for 20 years because I had gone away to faraway places and saw what people were doing to each other in the name of whose book was right. I had no, I was like, I can't, this is bad. Like, we got, this guy says his book's better than your book, and this, and they're killing each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I had an element of submission to something bigger than myself, I started getting very curious about this big hole inside me, because out of my intellectual and my physical health, there are elements of spiritual health that if we don't address those, like, yeah, you're only going to get so much better. And I like that there's parts of that are, it's also a touchy one too, because you can't jam that down someone's throat and say it's going to work.
Yeah.
Much like a lot of things, they got to come to that on their own. They got to find their own trail to get there. But once they do, much like addicts, like, you can't rob them of their basement. And you got to watch people auger in and get really, really sick and really, really bad.
So hard.
It's just hard watching someone that you love just killed, like, auger their life into the dirt. Mm-hmm. But you can't. They got to make that change, and they got to find it. They got to find the light for themselves, or else, or else it's all for naught. Mm-hmm. I had not had the chance. There was one that was advertised a few years ago that had horses on the property on Vancouver Island. I thought that but they don't have an equine therapy program. I think that stuff's really, really good. And a lot of them aren't really long enough, though. The first one I had gone 3 hours every Friday morning for 16 Fridays in a row. And that level of, here's a little bit of equine therapy and some tools and some community, and then you got to go and figure it out for the rest of the week. And it's a tough week. And you come back and we're going to give you another 3 hours of sessions, and we're going to, get a little bit better. It was like, here's a piecemeal tool for the toolbox. Go back out in the world and see how they work. Come back next week for 16 sessions. And I thought a really cool way to do it. Obviously, and then other ones, like, how much growth is a guy going to get out of a weekend to go drive for 4 hours, stand around with a bunch of strangers that they don't know, uninitiated. Yeah, there's community. Also, vets are very guarded. So how much am I really willing to open up to these strangers here, and I'm never going to see again? Am I really going to grow? So there's some of the models are much more challenging. And then the immersive model, like the 41-day program I did, like, that was great. Like, you got to see guys from day 1 to day 41. But what happens on day 42 is all on you, man. And so, some guys take those tools, and one of the problems with the 41-day program is, much like an inpatient treatment center or much like going away to war, life is easy when you're in these programs. It's scheduled. You know what you have to do, but it's taking all that stuff out and using those tools in real life that messes people up. It certainly messed me up. Like, I had no idea why I wanted to spend, like, I felt more comfortable fighting in wars for 6 months at a time, every 18 months over the course of my time in service. And then I'd come home and my life would fall apart. And it was because everything is, it's not real life. It's a constructed reality that's easy for you to thrive in because we've shown you how to do that. No one shows you how to thrive in real life. And it's the thing we got to figure out, helping these guys. So,
and I guess tell me what you think. You obviously have more insights, but it seems a lot with people who are going in the military. A lot of them are doing it when they're just kids still, and then that's their reality for the next 10 or 20 years, and then it's like, okay, now back to the world everybody else has been living in while you've been off doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined the Army at 16 years old on 9/11, and I did my first combat tour at 20. Because we had a program where you have to finish high school, and then my dad wanted me to go to college. Didn't really like it that much. I ran out of money, and I heard you got paid good to go to Afghanistan, so I signed up to volunteer to go. And then that changed the trajectory of the rest of my time in uniform. But you're right. The last it's interesting because the cowboy world's very similar. The last social construct that they understood was like high school. So you'll see guys in their 30s that still behave like high school boys. Or, they react to certain situations with this kind of discipline and self-control that a young man would, because they've actually been living in this kind of professional or social petri dish that is the military, or it is, range riding cowboys and stuff. It's actually very strange. I'm sure there's
interesting.
A sociological student out there working on a PhD thesis that could probably pull that out and get a doctorate out of it. That idea. Yeah. You're welcome, by the way. And but yeah, and it is. And like, one of the things with the military is, like, they tell you when to get your teeth checked. They tell you when to show up. They teach you how to work out. They teach you how to do all this stuff that benefits the institution sometimes at the cost of the individual. And when that structure is removed and you have to go forth and live your life. Like, now what? Like, I don't have someone that's making sure I get out of bed anymore, because if I don't, they're going to come to my house and drag me out of bed. Yeah. I don't have anyone booking my dentist appointments anymore. I don't have access to a gym that's across the street and told that we're all going to go and we're going to train together. Like, I have to keep on these things myself. One of the ones is like financial literacy is something that like soldiers and cowboys are terrible at. When did we ever teach our kids how to do things like their taxes? Instead, we
Yeah.
how to identify parallelograms and, you know,
Right. I
acute
know.
angle triangles.
Our education. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things, like, and I guess I kind of circle it back to the mental health piece is why don't we teach kids things like cognitive behavioral therapy? How come we don't teach that to soldiers? How come that's not a class, you know?
Yeah.
I
And
like
most
using,
sadly, I think we're doing the opposite now where we're like making it everybody else's responsibility for your well being. And
yeah, thank you. Like that's a huge one too. We've created this culture of victimhood where everything is everyone else's fault and I'm externalizing all accountability and responsibility for my own actions. And no one's taking a hard look anymore. You know what I mean? Like I went through
yeah.
a terrible time when we were first talking. I had gone through some really tough mental health stuff in my romantic life, in my professional life, and it was just such
Yeah.
a hard time. One of the hardest thing in the house for me to look at was the mirror. That was the most dangerous appliance in the house because I had to look inside myself when I brushed my teeth, and I had to really own my shit. Sorry, I swear, but that was.
Yeah.
But
It's all right.
it's a, and it is tough. You're right. We're outsourcing responsibility for those kinds of things. And the vehicle of the horse is one of the things that, like I said, you can't lie to it. You can't
Mhm.
bullshit a horse. You know what I mean? Like it's going to see through you and all your crap. And I
Yeah.
love that they keep you honest.
Yeah. They are really incredible for that and just highlighting like, yeah, this is this could be where your issues are coming from and the rest of your life because whatever, you don't have the confidence or you don't, you're living in fear all the time. I think that they do really highlight both of those things. What are some of the things that you took from, because you said like with the long program you did that was 41 days, like it's really easy while you're in there. So how do you transition that into um, everyday life? And I would guess, I mean, I don't know, I don't have the war background, but I definitely have the life struggles where it's like sometimes it seems like it's just a constant struggle. Like you have to, it's a maintenance thing. Like you can't just, not do anything with your body again and sit on the couch and watch TV and eat trash. You're probably not going to feel great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some of the tricks that I kind of, or my tricks, I mean, these are not new school ideas, right? One of them is that you hit the nail on the head. Like what you put in your body has a lot to do with how you feel. 100%. Like if you're drinking all the time, if you're consuming garbage food that's full of chemicals and dyes and everything else, like you're going to feel bad, right? Well, that's going to
Yeah.
like it's going to add body weight. Your bones and your joints are going to suffer. You're going to look at yourself in the mirror and not be proud of the person that you're looking at because man, I used to be fit and now I'm not, or I used to take good care of myself and now I'm not. My skin looks like hell, etc. So
Yeah.
first and
It is so
foremost,
cyclical.
it is super cyclical. It begets more negative things or additional
Hmm.
negative factors. So the not so new school tricks that I really took from that are vigorous exercise for like even 6 minutes. When I was living a very transient life as a saddle tramp, basically driving from Alaska down to Oklahoma, working for whatever outfit needed a guy for a month or the summer or something like that. And I drive around with a kettlebell in my truck. And when I started getting activated, I would swing this kettlebell until I couldn't swing it anymore. And I'd sit there, my chest would be heaving and all these things. But I realized once, because it also changes your blood chemistry when you work out vigorously
Yeah.
for a period of time. When you're struggling for air because you just did a workout, all of a sudden, that thing that was really bothering you, it turns the dial from 9 or 10 down to a 4. I also coupled that with meditation and a gratitude practice where instead of getting up and much like in, one of the things they teach driver's ed is if you're looking at a car crash and you're looking at the thing you don't want, don't look at the thing you don't want to hit, right? Look for the open space.
Yeah.
Good, right? And your body will naturally intend itself in that direction. And gratitude is like that as well. If I could get up here and I could look around and wish that I had all these things, the stoic practice of take the things that you have in your life that are awesome and then imagine how much you want them if they were taken away. That my mindset and my perspective shift on that was one. And precisely how grateful I am to have the privilege to struggle in the direction of wellness or struggle in the
Mm.
direction of success. Failure in the direction of progress is way better than succeeding and not going anywhere. And
Yeah. And I love that you bring up the topic of struggle just because I think, and this kind of goes back to pharmaceuticals, but it's like we almost, or even just with addiction, not wanting people to hit the bottom or whatever. it's almost like we're so desperate to take away struggle in our life and the lives of people we want. And it just stunts us, because even though that struggle can be devastating, like it's like the thing that we need to overcome.
Yeah. I learned two really cool lessons this year from an African tribesman in South Sudan when I was there working on an anti-poaching task force, where the food was bad. It was not great food. There were moments where like all we had was like tins of fish and crackers for several meals in a row, that kind of thing. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
And I got thinking about like, man, I can't, like, this food sucks. And this African tribesman was like, when did you people, and he's referring to us in the West, he's like, when did you people think that at any point food was actually supposed to taste good? And I was like, wait a minute. And I was able to translate that to struggle. Like, we're not supposed to have a struggle-free life. Like,
Yeah.
when did feeling deeply negatively when did feeling deeply negatively about something become actually bad? Yes, it's distressing in the moment, but the absence of that in life is not the point. The purpose of life is not to not feel that. It's part of life. And if I can change it to be a welcome part of my life, oftentimes, like, I use it as a bit of a litmus test or a vector check, because if I'm struggling, that means I'm probably doing something right. When I go to the gym and I work my muscles and they're sore the next day, they're uncomfortable. That means they're growing. Like growth occurs in discomfort. So if you're pushing and charging against something that's challenging, it means you're actually growing, and it doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to feel good. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's, yeah, just like going back to what they said, that's probably where we get it wrong. Like, what made us think that it is supposed to feel good all the time?
No.
That it's
I look,
supposed to be easy.
yeah, I look at some of the most grateful the things in my life that I've been the proudest of weren't easy. And if they were easy, I probably wouldn't be as proud of them. I look at how I feel at the end of the day. One of these outfits I work for in Wyoming, man, awesome guys, Stetter Outfitters. I'll work for that outfitter till I die. He's such a great mentor. And it's a 24-mile, 9.5-hour ride into camp. And you're hurt by the time you get 9.5 hours over mountains. There's several 10,000-foot peak passes you got to do, and you're smoked. You're either cold or you're wet because it's raining, or you're sunburnt and dehydrated and this kind of stuff. And you feel so good when you get off at the end of the day. And it's because it was hard to get in there. Now, I'm not saying that it's terribly, terribly hard to get in there, but it's a long, hard ride. And it's supposed to be, because
it's uncomfortable.
What's at the end of the long, hard ride is going to mean more because of the long, hard trail you had to ride to get there. And there's so many metaphors for life about the trail and the horses that I love. So the struggle is one, and changing my mindset and gratitude towards the things that I have and not vectoring on the things that I don't. And this is another one that's crazy, is cold water.
Yeah.
There's a lot of science behind what cold water does at the cellular level, how it also changes the microchemistry of our blood, and it for weight loss, for wellness, for immunosuppressant, like all these things. It's really good. And if I was activated several times during a particularly challenging time in my life romantically, and if I could swing that kettlebell for about 200 swings, and I did a 10-minute YouTube meditation, and I would get and spend 6 minutes in the water in the shower, as cold as it would go, I could crank that dial from 9 or 10 out of activation or stress down to maybe like a 4. And sometimes I need to do this a couple times a day. But for me, I would rather do that than take a pill. Now, I know that if I'm at work and my boss yells at me, I can't just grab my kettlebell and go jump in the cold shower.
Right.
But, I get that. But doing these things and stressing these bodies, like using these tools and creating discomfort and struggle, also, it's almost like a credit account. If I make this part of my everyday, and I do it before I go into something stressful, and I do it after I get out of something stressful, like say I do that in the morning before I go to work, and I do it when I get home, you build up a level of resiliency, not only in your physical corpus, but in your emotional and your intellectual corpus as well, and your spiritual one, where you now have almost like it's fortifying it, because you have these tools.
You can kind of raise that level where it's
so it's you can raise your resiliency bar. Like anything that pings past it puts me into crisis mode or whatever, right? But if you keep doing these things, you can raise that bar to the point. Honestly, the thing that's raised the bar the best for me in 2024 was my spiritual reckoning. And that, I don't know, like I'm going through, as I sit here, I'm going through a really tough time with a couple things in my life. And I've looked back to, say, 5 years ago when I did not have any spiritual awareness, and how I would be devastated right now were it not for the spiritual lessons and spiritual growth that I honestly stumbled upon because it was probably just time for me to do that in 2024.
Yeah.
And I just, it's like a blanket. It's a blanket. And I know through just dumb blind faith that everything's going to be fine, bro. I know it.
Yeah.
And it's because I have extended talks with Jesus. And it's because I read these books and I lead these lessons, and I like I believe in the philosophy of it, and what it's doing for me is so good. And it's not because I believe in it from a philosophical point of view. Like, I actually have just plain old blind faith that it's going to be fine, and that there's something out there bigger for me than this, what I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was part of that initiated from spending time? I mean, you spend a lot of time outside in the wilderness in Africa. Did that initiate some of it?
It's yes, it actually occurred that I think my spiritual awakening was trying to reach out to some mentors, because the kettlebells and the cold shower and all these things, like, yeah, they're working, but there's just still something missing. It's like a pie chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my good community and my exercise, my, like, all these things form a pie, but that huge slice of the pie that was missing was spiritual fulfillment. And I was in Greeley, LaSalle, Colorado in June, I think it was, this year. And I was just down there. I was just fresh out of Africa. I just got back to the States, that kind of thing. And I saw something that just changed my life. I was at a roping clinic laid on by a cool guy. He's a vet and he's a young father, and and his wife and his kid were there. Laid on this roping clinic because I'm a terrible roper. And I made this year the year of the horse. Go be bad at something in front of your friends for the sake of being good at it eventually, because you want to get good. And you're never going to get that way if you hide and don't. So get yourself. So I signed up for this thing, and he's a young family, and they're very religious. And I saw she's got his wife Bailey has a little baby on their arm, and he's over there teaching the finer points of roping. The ministry, the church that has a farm attached to it, they were able to provision me with a loaner horse, which I later learned was like the boss's horse, which is like the dopest horse I've been on in my yeah.
And that was a nice loan.
Yeah, but I didn't even. That's another thing too. I was so scared to put in a bad button, And I got a picture of me roping this cow, and I'm yanking on my horse's face and spurring it at the same time, and trying to manage my coils. And I'm such a new guy, and I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was embarrassed to post this photo. And then I got thinking, like, no, man, post it, and then and then share what you're doing wrong in it. Share, be humble. Be like, I'm new at this, and these are the mistakes I'm seeing myself make in this photograph or this video.
Yeah.
And share that with people, and just own that you're not great at something. And that was the kind of hands and feet moment where I started to really kind of choke down my own ego and do that. But the spiritual side of this is, I looked at this religious couple and what they've done for us and what they've done, and I just looked at something and I was like, I want that. This little family they have, and they work really hard. He gave me this. I was there at it with a friend. I had stayed with a friend after that, and he had given me this oldest, like, The Way for Cowboys, and it's like a little pocket Bible. And now it lives in my saddlebag. It's on my truck, and when I'm not in when I'm in the trail, it's in my saddlebag. And I started reading it, and the book of Matthew. I started praying more, and in the high country especially, because it's so quiet out there. It's like the base camp's at 10,000 feet, and that's pretty close to God.
Yeah,
it's certainly
as close as you can get. Yeah,
it's as close as I can get right now. And it's just louder up there, and it's quiet. How do I say this? It's quiet up there, but prayer comes out louder, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's probably a really cool way for me to put that. But it just started. Things started happening, and I just have no reason for them to have gone as well as they have outside that awakening. And it's wild because none of my family's religious, and you know what I mean. And the doors that it's opened and the way that it's helped me in times of crisis and in times of in times of abundance have just been, I've never not been grateful for having that, and not for a second here since. And it's introduced me to great people, and it's introduced me to great opportunities, and it's given me the shield that I needed to grow. Yeah, because it filled that hole that I've been looking for 39 years. I turned 40 in a few weeks, and it really filled that hole for me. It just changed how I look at the world.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know spiritual stuff can be tricky to share, but
yeah,
I know for me, like, man, when you're out there on the mountain, like, there's just no doubt, like, that there's a God, some divine power, like, out there watching out for you, wanting the best for you, ready to help you after you kind of hit that bottom, that pit that I think a lot of times you just have to hit it. There's just not necessarily a way around it.
And that's the thing, is, like, you're right. Like, people, we've associated that pit with, like, the lowest points of our life. And if you can look at that low point in your life later, or ideally when you're in it, with gratitude, be like, there is something coming. There is something bigger than me. I'm alive. Maybe you don't have a roof over your head. Maybe you don't have money in the bank. Maybe your truck's broke down. You can't get to your job. Maybe you don't even have a job, you know? But if we can look at these as opportunities instead of as these pitfall, challenge, struggles, you're in the pit. Like if you could just change, if we could change the way that we look at it,
Yeah.
it frees up so much emotional and cerebral and spiritual bandwidth to tackle these things with just a mindset that is a winning mindset. It's wild. And it's the thing is, until you get it, I can tell this to guys and they're blue in the face. Like I got vets that are hooked on opiates and their wife left them and their kid won't talk to them and their life is total garbage and they don't have enough money in the bank and they're going to lose their home. And I'm like, dude, like until you look at this different, like I can't give you and bottle it what I got right now. But if you can change the way you think about it and open up your heart to look at this differently than the way you're looking at it right now, when you experience it once, it'll never leave you. You'll have that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's really hard to watch guys. They struggle so much against it. There's other reasons I think for that, which are, but yeah, I get you.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that very thing the other day, how, they say practice gratitude or whatever. And I think like that's the first step to getting to where, like you said, your mindset is just different now. And I think, we've kind of talked about this. You only have so much energy, focus that you can put somewhere. And so if all of that is going into the negative, like that's where your life is driving. And conversely, if you can just look a little bit over here, it's like you can start to go a little bit that way until it does become a lot easier. Cause I've kind of seen that same thing in my life where it's like it's not as much a struggle as it was when, I was consciously trying to okay, I want to change the trajectory. I'm not happy with where it's going.
Yeah. I see folks, they'll focus on negative and there's an indirect focus on negative. I see people do too, where they work extra hard to keep negative things out of their life. They try to insulate and bubble wrap their life so that they don't experience any of that. And I think that there's two problems with that. One is by not focusing on something, you actually are focusing on it.
Yeah.
And the other one is that I'm not saying go out in -40 with no coat on because you want to know what it's like to struggle, or nuke your bank account at a gambling machine so that you can feel virtuous and poor. But I'm saying if you look at these challenges and these struggles with an open heart and an open mind, you will grow in your resilience. Like you talked about, you will push that bar up. I look at guys, I look at dudes who, particularly some of my veteran community guys that are not initiated to horses or don't live the lifestyle I do, and that's fine, whatever works for them. Yeah. And some of these guys will lose their ever-loving mind when they go to tie their shoes and the shoelaces don't come out the same length. Or they'll burn the toast. And they'll just, these little things, the smallest thing
makes it all explode.
Yeah. And then they turn to drugs or alcohol or, social media. They'll check out and doom scroll, or they'll go and they'll smoke their government issue weed because nope, we don't want you to have to feel anything. I was like, well, no, dude, you got to feel it to heal it. You got to,
that's such a huge thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the modern medical systems try to insulate people from anything.
Well, just trying to repress all those feelings, get rid of them, get them out of, if we don't feel them, it'll be fixed. And there's a thing that's been going around that says, the way is through it. You have to go through it. That's the only way to get out is to go through it. And I've certainly found that that's true. As much as I wanted things to just go away, I even think about this with, prayer and God. There are times where I just pray, fix this for me. Why won't you just fix it for me? And it's because there were lessons I need to know, ways I needed to grow. I had to go through it. And it's just not the same thing if, things magically are fixed for us, whether that's with medication or how we think it might be fixed with things or, reaching a certain achievement or whatever.
Yeah. I look at it, you mentioned the only way is through, right? There's a great book and it's called The Obstacle is the Way. It's a kind of a layperson basic teachings of Stoic principles of removing emotion from a lot of, they say, stimulus, or my own emotional reaction to this is actually less important than the thing that's actually happening to me, and it's based on looking at challenges as opportunities, changing our perspective and our perception of what that looks like. And when we don't do that, it debilitates. It's almost what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost much like the way an immune system works. Small doses of things develop antibodies and it gives you an reaction that is less debilitating than had you not had it. And you can give yourself emotional, it's almost like you're giving yourself an emotional and spiritual inoculation by going through these challenging things. I didn't know how to pray. So I was asking some guys that, their life looks like something I want it to look like. And I was like, how is it that you converse with the world? How is it that you converse with whatever creator that you like? And they don't pray for things like, just fix this for me. They never ask for the creator to fix things. They ask for the strength to deal with them. They ask for bigger shoulders. They ask for more powerful legs to carry the weight of the world in their backpack and move through it. They don't ask it for it to be removed. They ask for them for the strength to deal with it at its current weight, at its current full bore. Jordan Peterson is a huge hero of mine. And actually really strange is that Alberta horse trip that I went on just last week, that's from the town in. It's Fairview, Alberta. It's like, it's a little one horse town. And
really?
And he talks about, Jordan Peterson talks about, like, you are at your best when you shoulder as much burden as you possibly can and you carry it on your shoulders in the direction of progress. And it sucks. It's hard. It's supposed to be. Life's not supposed to be margaritas on the beach all the time. That's cool, but that's not purpose. That's not the life. And I have that. Like, I'm a pensioned war veteran. And I literally can go around and pursue some things. I've got some friends, and their whole life is living in an RV on a beach. And that works for that guy. Like, he's my dear friend. I love him to death, but that lifestyle would kill me. Absolutely would kill me. I need to struggle in the direction of something I find purposeful and meaningful. And before he had elements of purpose in his life, I saw that in him too. And he's such a dear friend. And to watch him go through it when he struggled, we got to struggle through some things together. And then our trails diverged, and we're both doing very well now because we have struggle in the direction of purpose and progress. And that might not be what we think it is. Maybe it's trying to raise the best version of your children that you can. Like, maybe you're never going to be the CEO of Xerox someday. You just fix their copiers. Maybe that's not the thing that sets your soul on fire. But it's something. It's something. I'm going to be the best husband I can be. That kind of thing. So it's
honestly, and I feel like that's part of the problem in the world today is because the things we're told to pursue are often like the material things, the CEO position, money, whatever it is. And obviously, like, money is important. You have to be able to financially provide for yourself. And so I think that's where it gets a little tricky, but we tend to devalue so much, like, your sense of purpose. Even if that is, like you say, changing diapers because you're raising kids, or going to work because you have people to provide for, and finding your passion outside of work. But yeah, I think that is a lot of what creates a lot of struggle for everybody. And it's also something I've heard a lot when people are coming out of the military, is that they have this tremendous sense of purpose, and you come out and it's gone.
It was purpose, and identity.
Yeah.
I've had, like, I struggle romantically, and I don't know how many times I've had a girl I wanted to date tell me, like, I don't think you know who you are. And I was like, does anybody? But then I got thinking about, like, who the hell am I?
Yeah.
I used to use what I did as a job to define myself as a person. And I now realize, back, that's, like, stupid. Like, who are you? It's like, I'm a nurse, or I'm a fighter. Like, no, dude, that's not who you are. That's a thing you do.
Yeah.
So one of the things when I don't know the answer to a question, at least I try to find a better question to ask. And so the better question I started asking myself was, what kind of a son do I want to be? What kind of a professional do I want to be? What kind of a horseman? What kind of a friend? What kind of an uncle, etc. And when I was able to kind of, like, I know that I want to be reliable. I want to be a guy that people will look to in crisis. And so it was through these things I kind of started getting a better idea of who the hell I am. Purpose, I found, was a little bit on the easier side.
Yeah.
To have the carpet pulled out from my time in service, because I was medically discharged on reasonably short notice. And it was like all of a sudden my whole life changed. My whole life literally changed.
Like a ton.
Yeah. And I was doing, like, as a special forces operator, that's all I ever wanted to do. And I realized, and it's kind of crazy because, like, some people have to work their whole life to achieve their dream. I achieved my dream at 21 years old. And I was like, okay, cool, now what? And now my life looks like a transient nomadic gong show. And I just kind of drive around checking off bucket list items, which also isn't really purposeful. Like, am I doing this just to be a guy that dies with a collection of cool experiences? Or what's my actual purpose? How am I going to leave my mark on the world?
Yeah.
I know that the two things that I want, I had a dream where, I don't know where this kind of came. I'm having wild dreams lately. And I guess, like, my three biggest adventures left on planet Earth are being a husband, a father, and dying. I think that's, like, honestly, I've done so much cool stuff. And I
Yeah,
just
you
want
have.
to, yeah, and I just
Yeah.
kind of want to fill the time between now and then collecting other cool experiences. But I think the ones I really want the most to be a husband and a dad. But that's one of those things you can't stare at that. Once again, you can't look at the thing you don't have and pine for the thing you don't
Yeah.
have. Assemble your life, put yourself together, and then what is for you will appear. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I don't think I'm doing a very good job at it, but that's okay because I'm new at this. I'm only,
Yeah.
I'm still just kind of living life on my first go around, So I mean, I'm figuring it all out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are. I think there's an illusion out there that some people have it all together and have it figured out. And I think it creates a lot of pain and struggle because we have that perception that other people have it figured out or things are easy for other people. And I think the reality is like we're all going through this journey, not
Yeah,
knowing what on earth we're doing. Like, I'm always amazed when I see something from like ancient that I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now. Like, why did it take me so much trouble to like come to that same conclusion that they came to hundreds and thousands of years ago? And some of it, it's like we got to go through it. Like, we got to live it.
yeah, I get a kick out of that. That's one of the spices of life that I absolutely love is the fact that I'm terrible at things that other people are really good at, and I'm really good at things that other people are just terrible at. And when
Yeah.
you put two people in a room that are kind of complementary like that, it's so interesting. Like I can't. So for one, I should almost have my man card revoked because I can't build stuff with my hands to save my life. I'm a measure once, cut twice guy.
Yeah.
The other way, exactly right. I'm bad at it, and then other guys are great at it. And like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm a very emotionally literate person, and I see people that are terrible at it, and I was like, hey man, let me show you a trick. And then we all help each other grow a little bit. There's this interesting Far Side comic I discovered when I was in a language school for Spanish in 2012. I just got out of another trip to Afghanistan and I suffered a traumatic brain injury in a parachute accident. And I now know that the worst thing they possibly could have done for me was to sit me in a room with a traumatic brain injury where I was trying to learn a new language for 10 straight months for 8 hours a day. I felt the wheels fell off my wagon. But I remember when I was going through that time, a lot of stress, there was a Far Side comic that showed a bunch of people walking down the street, but they all had one of the same collective thought bubble. And the thought bubble caption read, everyone seems to know what's going on except for me. And it's true. Like, you look at people whose lives are relatively put together, we have no idea what they're going through. Like,
Yeah.
I look
Not
at
at all.
the people that I think know me the best, probably know about 10% or 15% of me.
Yeah.
And then so I just automatically assume that I only know 5 to 10 to 15% of like what's going on in your life. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what's I don't know how you felt this morning when you got up. I'll never know any of that stuff. Even though I look at people that have been married their whole life, I don't think my mom and dad even really know each other that well, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is this illusion with media, and it looks like everyone else has way more money and cooler cars and hotter wives and all this other shit. And you're
Yeah, or
like,
they've just figured it out, like mentally, is the thing that I was like, they seem like they figured it out. Why am I still struggling over here
I look
trying to
at
figure life out?
yeah, like something I like to do is I like to do autopsies on my lucky breaks. So like I think about something that happened to me that was just sheer luck and I screwed it up. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
what did I do wrong? And I autopsy that particular thing. Like, I don't know. Like, I had a sheep client a couple years ago when I was guiding in Wyoming who owned the Subway sandwich franchise and he
Mm-hmm.
sold it. And that now he lives in a beautiful place in Colorado. And he was just an excellent guy to chat and visit with. I thought he was great. We had really interesting conversations, but this guy has millions and millions of dollars in his home. And I'm like, working for $100 a day, guiding sheep. And we would never be in the same room together, let alone the same little dome tent at 11,500 feet trying to pursue big game sheep. I was able to glean insight, obviously, from this man. And his lucky break was when he was, I forget, he's like, I just finished college and my grand $1,000 loan. And his dynasty that he built was based off of that break. And he was like, and I was really careful and I'm really lucky because I didn't screw it up. There were lots of times I probably could have screwed it up. It just didn't work out that way for me. And that's not saying that people that get lucky breaks don't put in an immense amount of hard work,
Yeah.
because they do. Like, I look at these guys who make 150K a year and whatever their lifestyle looks like. It's not because it's just all luck. They're not trust fund kids. That a lot of them, well, some of them are, but a lot of people, these people work really hard. Like, you look at someone in the gym who's in great shape and they have good money and they have a great job. Like, that guy works really hard to have all that,
Yeah.
and vice versa. I think that there's issues in society today with like the betatization or the feminization of men, the masculine women. I think of what that's doing with DEI things, how we're bubble safeguarding and bubble wrapping people's existence. So now you have a right to not be offended, or this perception that you have a right to not be offended. And I think we're moving in a really screwed up direction. But one thing that is not moving in a screwed up direction is that people are still working incredibly hard to realize their dream and keep their life together. And that's, I'm going to say a bad word, that's fucking awesome. Yeah. We haven't lost that yet.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's really easy to look in from the outside, and you don't see the struggle. You don't see all the hardship that has come in order to reach you're just seeing, like you say, this tiny little part of someone's life where they've made it to. And who knows what was behind that? Who knows what that took?
And one of the things that always keeps me very grateful for what I have today is that it can all be gone in an instant. No matter what, like it could, the bomb could drop, or you could get really sick, or people that you love could pass away in a car crash. You could slip in the shower and never have the use of your legs again for the rest of your life. And that can happen at any time. And so you better, I'm sitting here busted ass ribs, and I'm grateful for it. I do some of my best philosophizing and my best speaking, my hardest praying when I'm hurt and sick. And I had a heck of a year for that. I got malaria this year, mountain spotted fever. I had a heart attack, and now I've got broken ribs. And I'm 39 years old, and I wouldn't trade any of it. It has given me a different lens in which to look at gratitude, because I've almost, I could have died a bunch of times. And I'm so happy for that. I can't change it. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think we definitely got you on at the right time then.
Thank you. Yeah, before
you're injured and have been philosophizing and thinking on things. It's been super cool to talk to you, see where you're at. Just talking to you, I can tell the progress and just the determination and openness that you're moving forward with. And it's really cool to see. And I think really cool to hear, and to hear the things that have helped you, because you've overcome a lot for sure. It's been a hard road, but you're doing cool things.
Really lucky when someone's interested and wants to hear. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not trying to sell inspiring stories and stuff, but it's if there's someone out there that's hey, I don't know if I can do it. I was I promise you can. I absolutely promise. It might not seem like you can, but you just kind of get out of bed and do it. And that's what I've had to do. And I'm very lucky to have come as far as I do. And I'm certainly not out of the water yet, but I'm okay with being in the water, I suppose, is the way I should look at it.
Yeah, and I don't know that any of us ever are. It's so precious, like you said, to be in a good place in always health, mentally. It's a constant struggle that I think really everybody's on it, everybody's doing it, and we just not everybody's willing to talk about it, I would say, because I also really appreciate you just coming on and talking about it and being real. I know for a lot of people, and even with horses, a lot of people I talk to with horses, those are some of the times that are really close to, your soul, your heart. They're not always the easiest things to talk about. So I'm grateful for you coming on and talking about your journey and the things that you've learned. I really do think that it will help other people and inspire other people, because you definitely have a lot about your life that's inspiring.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. It's been a treat. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.